Hi everyone, my name is still Ruth and I'm still here as a youth worker at St James. Welcome to the St James YouTube channel. We're going to be talking today. I don't know if you remember or if you've watched any of the others. If you haven't, go check them out because they're pretty good. We've been talking about God's promises. The first week we talked about what are God's promises, and last week we looked at the promise, I will always love you. And today we're going to talk about the promise, I will be with you always. So I want you to think in your head, and I'm going to ask my friend behind the camera this as well. Is there a place in the world where you feel most peaceful or most happy? Somewhere out in nature. So in case you don't know, we are here at a place called Brimham Rocks, which is just a bunch of rocks in a park near my parents' house. It's well nice. Yeah, definitely being out in nature for me is a big one. Where I used to work, I used to live by a huge lake, and we'd go out on the lake paddle boarding or swimming, and it was just really peaceful. I might insert some pictures here. There's a big campfire above it. It was pretty cool, and it was definitely somewhere that I personally felt God's presence. Like, we were out in God's creation. I was surrounded by people who were quite like-minded to me, and I definitely felt like God was there whenever we were there, and that was really cool. So maybe this time think about a place that you don't feel peaceful or comfortable at, maybe somewhere that you felt quite anxious at. It's stuck in traffic going to Asda. Fair enough, yeah, I can imagine that one being not great. But I used to live in a house when I went to uni in America in Syracuse, and in this house there were 4 girls and we just didn't all get on. There was one who was quite difficult to live with. There was a lot of tension in the house, a lot of arguments, and it was a really difficult place to live, and it was definitely somewhere where I haven't always felt the presence of God. And there's been times when I was like, this sucks, like why, what is going on? I don't get it. But I got a news flash for you all. So think about the difference between those two places that you just thought of. And the crazy thing is that God was in both of them. For me, God is by that lake in that meadow, but he was also in that house when I was struggling. And sometimes it's hard to remember that. And yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched like a history documentary or any documentary, but they do like a walking around clip of them telling a story. Roll, cut to other Ruth, let's go. The book of Daniel tells us the story of King Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar decided that he was the greatest and that everyone should bow down and worship him, so much so that he built a massive gold statue of himself and demanded people to worship it. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego were Jewish people living in that kingdom, and they knew they shouldn't do this because they loved and worshipped God. When Nebuchadnezzar found out they were not bowing down to this statue, he got mad and sentenced them to death in the fiery furnace. Think a massive oven. He threw the 3 men in there, and when he checked to see if they were dead, he was surprised to find that they were fine. They weren't burnt, their clothes weren't even singed. So Nebuchadnezzar ordered them to turn up the oven 70 times hotter than it usually was. The guards who were turning it up died instantly from the heat. But when Nebuchadnezzar checked again, not only did he find 3 men alive, he found 4 men alive in the fire because God was with them in that fiery furnace. When Nebuchadnezzar saw this, he denounced himself and decided that God was the God that we should be following. God was there in the fiery furnace with Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. Back to Ruth in the studio. Ding! Anyone outside looking in would think that Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego had been completely forgotten by their God that they didn't even believe in. But as soon as they looked inside the fire, they saw that God was still with them. And that is crazy. I don't know what it must have felt like to be one of those people who had worshipped the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. But God hadn't forgotten them. God was still there with them. And this is an important reminder for us. So while sometimes it feels like we're stuck in that fiery furnace, they looked in and they saw 4 people, not 3. And that 4th person was God. So I don't know if you've ever heard, there's a poem that a lot of people quote, and it's a great poem. However, it's just a bit too soppy for me. I don't know, maybe I'm just like got an ice heart or something. But the gist of it is that a man has died and he's looking along the beach, looking at all of this time in his life. And during the good parts of his life, he sees 2 sets of footprints, and he turns to God and he's like, I see you, you were there in the happy times. Look, that was my birthday party. That was my wedding, I don't know. God was there. And then he looks in at some of the harder parts of his life, maybe when he was, I don't know, during lockdown and coronavirus or whatever it was, And he goes, why is there just one footprint there? God, you left me in my darkest day, where were you? And God turns around and he goes, actually, kind sir, I was with you, but where there's only one set of footprints, I was carrying you. Those are my footprints. And like, the sentiment is there. It just doesn't do anything for me, because I'm a bit like, I don't know, do you know what I mean? It's just a bit soppy, but like, whatever. But that's the point though, is that even when we feel like maybe we're alone in the hard times, God is still there. He promised us that. There is a bunch of Bible verses. My favourite Bible verse is Isaiah 43 verse 2, and it says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And those waters, they come, and they're really difficult at times, but just like Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, and just like the man in the poem, Jesus and God are still with us all the time. And I think that's the message that I want you guys to remember this week. And what is it, your second, third week back at school? Maybe you're totally used to it and it's fine and there's no issues. Or maybe you're struggling and it's really difficult. Wherever you are on that spectrum, God is with you, and that is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you for watching this video, and we will see you next week. I always want to say I'll see you next week for the next leg, but that's just because I've watched a lot of Last Leg in my life. Hope you enjoyed. See you next week. Goodbye. Woo! Let's go get that shot.